Well, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for people of all ages to see, hopefully learn a little bit about us seniors, and what some of our dreams, some of our thoughts. We still have dreams, we still have goals, we want to still have fun. And I think that's going to be a big benefit of a documentary with us seniors, to let people, the younger generation may have a little different perspective of us, because they don't really know.
My name is Steve Holland, currently live in Gilroy, California. I've been down in this area since 1990, and I moved down here so I could afford to buy a horse and have a ranch where I could put the horse and start playing cowboy, I guess. Been all over the world, you name it. Newfoundland, my two sisters were born there in the early 50s. Went from Newfoundland, which is very cold. I was pretty much the pillboy doughboy when I went to 2 miles walking in the snow to school. You hear those stories that people don't believe, but it was true. To Hawaii for 3.5 years. So, and then back to California, where we traveled every 3 months to a different state. My father was in the Navy, so we were military brats, and he was a flight instructor. So we went to different bases throughout the U.S., and he taught servicemen about flying. One of my favorite memories was at my grandmother's house in Florida in 1957, 10 years old. It was Florida, so you think sunny retirement. It was snowing, and of course Christmas time, and she didn't have indoor plumbing, so naturally we had to go out in the snow and use the outhouse. But those were some good old days. But consequently, I didn't make a lot of friends that lasted over the years, because we did relocate constantly, and I always felt strange about that. I went to my ex-wife's high school reunion back in around '86, a 10-year reunion. She knew everybody and they all knew her. I was just a person standing there with her. I don't know what you call that, arm candy, but anyway, at the time. But back in '99, a bunch of people got together on Facebook and reconnected with Yamato High School, Tachikawa Air Force Base in Japan. And they started having a reunion every 2 years. And in 2015, we had our 50-year reunion, so that was really kind of nice. But back in the late 70s, early 80s, I started doing some modeling. I went to Barbizon Modeling School, and I did get some work. And then I did some TV commercials, a Rata Pontiac down in Burlingame. I was actually a cowboy. This is an interesting story, but I'll make it short. I drove up to the front of a bar in Burlingame, and I had several days of growth on my face, but I had an electric razor. So I sat there and I shaved my face. And I went inside and they wanted us to look like we had growth on our face from a few days. So here I am, clean shaven. But being professional as they were, they said, there's a bar out there. So we went to the bar and got the coffee grinds from the big old percolating coffee pot. And they go, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna do this? They got the little jar of cherries. They took the juice, put it all over my face, put the coffee grinds on it, so I looked like I had a growth. And I took a pocket full of toothpicks and poked at it all day long while we filmed. And that kind of led on to some movies in the early 80s with Chuck Norris, karate flicks. So did a few of those as a background actor. And like I said, I got asked to move to Hollywood, and I thought about it. I was working in electronics and since '69, and making good money, designing chips like today are in your phones and laptops and all, pre-computers, but making good money. And I thought moving to LA, I'd probably end up being a busboy, hoping to get a good break. And I decided against going. Plus I was starting a family, and over the years I've had 5 kids, and now I have 9 grandkids, of course. But currently I started going to cowboy action shooting in the year 2000, and went down to LA for the World Championships called Intl for the Single Action Shooting Society, which is called SAS. And I watched, and then I saw the Wild West show, people riding fast on horseback and shooting balloons with blanks. And I thought about it, I go, I don't think I could ride like that. I'd probably fall off. It's too fast. And then a lady came out all decked out in her nice leather outfit, a leather vest with red roses on it, a big old hat, big red scarf, cuffs, chaps with big conchos, silver conchos. I thought, wow, she looks great. Well, she walked up to each of one of those balloons and shot them one at a time. Shot the first 5, put her gun away, and stopped and took out her compact mirror. Put on some lipstick, brushed her hair a little bit, put that away, pulled out her other gun and shot the other 5 balloons. And I thought to myself, I can do that. I can look pretty and go slow. So I got into cowboy mounted shooting, which subsequently led to Wild West shows at the Grand National Rodeo, La Honda Rodeo for many years, Course Gold Rodeo. We did Mariposa State Fair last year, and we got asked back for this coming year in September and Labor Day weekend, and we just got another call for the Course Gold Rodeo this week, so for May. So a lot of things coming up. In the meantime, I started going to LA to do background work in Western movies. And we did, well, several years ago, I got contacted to do a movie called Four Winds with A. Martinez, where he was an Indian, but he was a spirit and not a real Indian. And another actor was playing, Jerry Wolf was playing an Indian, and the spirit was trying to guide him. Well, you know, they used me to stand next to A. Martinez. He specifically pointed me out, I want that guy to come, because he doesn't, I'm not starstruck, and I'm not, you know, I pay attention to what I'm supposed to do. So he asked me to stand next to him while he did his scenes, because he's a ghost. So nobody can see him, so I didn't see him, but he did all kinds of things all around me. And then he went outside, and they had the ghost was going to wrestle with the live Indian under the horses. Well, the movie horses didn't stand still, and they were stomping around, so they were afraid. So they asked me if they could borrow my horse, and my horse, Snaky Poo was his name, like Winnie the Pooh, but Snaky Poo. He stood still while they wrestled around underneath him. He was the star. Next thing you know, the Union Cavalry officer wanted to borrow my horse because he was riding a horse that was jumping all over the place. So next thing you know, 3 different people besides myself were riding my horse in the same movie. And that was around 2011. After that, I started going back down to LA and working in movies like one called Traded with Michael Pear. He was in Eddie and the Cruisers, and I believe it was called The Philadelphia Story. Then I did Hickok, and Trace Atkins is in both of those films. I did a quick film with Danny Trejo called Calico Queens for a trailer for a potential movie or series. And just recently, in September, I did a movie called Soldier's Heart. It's a Western, and then another Western the next month called Outsider. Once again, Trace Atkins is in both films, Danny Trejo, Jake Bussey, a few other actors. So I've been getting a lot of work. And I went back down to LA in December 6th and did a commercial where I played a homeless guy who lived in a coffin, which is kind of strange to have him close the coffin door on you when you're laying there. A lot of method acting there. But anyhow, currently I'm retired. I started coming to the senior center back in August and meeting new friends, sitting back, finding out what the whole atmosphere was. And part of the reason I did get started coming to the senior center was back in about 5 years ago, my significant other father, I call him father-in-law because we've basically been together 22 years, he bought a trailer and put it on our ranch, and we took care of him. But I kept trying to get him to come down to the senior center, maybe to play checkers or cards or just socialize. His wife had died about 5 years before, and he basically was sitting in the trailer all day long watching TV, nothing to do. And his mind started slipping, a little early dementia. And one day I walked out, he was crawling around, it rained, he's crawling around on all fours looking for his wife, ex-wife, well, deceased wife. And I had to actually pick him up and carry him back to his RV. But then he got to where he wouldn't use the thermostat to heat his trailer. He started using the burners on the stove, which is dangerous. And not to get into too many details, but he did some other things that were a hazard to his health and to himself. We put him into a nursing home, and for a while, then they moved him to a private nursing home where he had his own private room, but he didn't last more than a month. And I kept thinking, well, I'm 71 now, and I don't want to be like that. I want to stay alert, come down here. We play bingo, I play bocce ball, which I never played before. I socialize with my friends here, and we all tell stories and lie a little bit, exaggerate, but I think it serves a purpose. My significant other doesn't think I should do this all the time, but I'm retired, she's not. She works, so it is what it is. I just do what I want to do. but I'm glad I started coming. I was like, do I really want to go there and feel old? But I don't feel old being here. I feel just as young as I am, I always said you're only as old as you feel. And so it's important to get out and do things. And I'm looking for other things to do too, like travel to the museums and other trips they have here. I think it's really a good thing that they have a good program.
My name is Virginia Bench. I'm a senior. I am 84 years old. I have wrinkles on my face, which I am very, very proud of. I've earned every one of them, but I hate the bags under my eyes, and you can all have them. My life is divided into chapters. The first chapter is when I was born in Detroit, Michigan, until the age of about 13. My father died when I was about 8.5 years old, and my sister and I were put into an orphanage. We also had a younger brother who was 2. We never could understand why we were put into an orphanage, because in Detroit at that time, school was from about 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So my sister and I really didn't require a lot of care. My brother, who was 2, of course, required a lot more care than we needed. But talking to family members, we never could get a straight answer, so we kind of put that aside. In the 40s, it was very unusual for a woman to own a home. My mother bought a 2-bedroom house after my father died, and we lived there with my brother till I was about 13 years old, and it was during the war, and her brother was stationed in California, and he loved the weather, and he persuaded my mother to move to California because he told her it would be much cheaper for her to raise 3 children as a widow. She wouldn't have to buy galoshes, snowsuits, and Californians aren't used to this, but coal to stock the coal bin with. So she packed up, sold the house, and we all moved to California, and there I stayed. Lived in California. She bought another house at Westchester, California, and I lived there, graduated, went to Westchester High School, married quite young. I was 18. My husband was in the service, the Korean War, married, had 4 children. He was an engineer. We moved from Los Angeles area to Sunnyvale, moved to Morgan Hill in the late 60s, 2.5 acres, raised hydroponic tomatoes, sold to Nob Hill, raised cucumbers, sold to Durkee for pickles. That was a job. 6:30 a.m. out in the fields, picking cucumbers. I would cry, please plow up those long lines of vines. Those cucumbers grew so fast, I didn't know, I couldn't believe it. One day they would be that small, and the next day they would be humongous, that big. And of course you were paid by the size of the cucumbers, so you wanted those little tiny ones. Oh, it was really a lot of work. Farmers don't get paid enough money, let me tell you, if you've been on your knees picking in the wet soil. So then after I became a single parent, I moved to Woodland Estates, and that's where I am right now. I have a mobile home, which unfortunately is under renovation because I had a water leak. So I am living out of a cooler at the present time, which is very interesting. And I come more frequently now to the senior center. I live alone, and I have a theory. Of course, I'm a little strange to begin with, but I have a theory that the reason that seniors' voices have a real wavery kind of quality is because they don't use it. If you don't use something, you lose it. So I feel you have to use your vocal cords every day. If you live alone, who do you talk to? If you have a pet, you talk to your pet. Even if it's a goldfish, for God's sake. But if you live alone, who do you talk to? You have to talk to someone. You come here, you at least talk to someone. Hello, how are you? You see someone new at your dinner table. My name is Virginia. Of course, the other person will respond with their name. And you start up a conversation. You're oiling your vocal cords. It keeps them fluid so that you don't sound like an old duff. You know, you don't want to sound old. You want to sound young and vibrant because mentally you're probably 20 years younger up here than you are in this shell we call a body. I have been coming here for a very, very long time, and I just love it. The people here are fantastic. The food is marvelous. You couldn't get a better meal for $3 if your life depended on it. And the people here are so attuned to your needs, and they handle any kind of an emergency, from the ridiculous to the sublime. And I will tell you something that is absolutely hilarious, and how they react to emergencies. You can see that I'm in a wheelchair. This power chair has the ability to recline, to take the pressure off my back for some of my medical conditions. I was in a lobby one day waiting for outreach at that time, and I was in a reclined position, so my chair was way back. My legs were up in the air like this. VTA shows up. The mechanics on my joystick would not allow me to put the chair down. The men, of course, because women know nothing at all about mechanical procedures, they all came over. They were going to fix my chair. They started pressing all the buttons on the joystick. Nothing happened. They got down on the floor looking underneath to see if there was any loose connections. Nothing happened. And of course, here I am with my legs sprayed up in the air, and I'm thinking, dear Lord, thank you so much for me wearing pants today and not a dress. So I'm in this position. What are we going to do? Denise, where's Denise? Oh, somebody get Denise. Okay, so now we have this little lobby with all these men, and Denise, Chris. What are we going to do? 911. Okay, so they call 911. Now we have the paramedics come. The fire department comes. They're all coming in the lobby, and here I am still upside down with my legs up in the air. Nobody knows what to do. The fire department looks. VTA looks. The paramedic looks. VTA by law cannot enter your house. Okay. So here we go now. The fire department says, well, we got to get her home. All right. VTA loads me up in the big van, the cutaway van, because the minivan, of course, would not take me with my legs up in the air. So they get the cutaway van. They get me in the van, legs up in the air. Fire department follows me. Paramedics follow me. We have this procession now going into my mobile home park. Me, paramedics, the fire department, all on a parade into the mobile home park. We get in front of my mobile home, unload me, still in the upright position. Now my sister is home. I forgot to tell them that my sister was there. Now, you have to remember this. This is very important. The prerequisites to be a fireman or a paramedic is that they have to be handsome. Everybody knows that. My sister's in her chair, and all of a sudden, this big, tall, handsome man bursts into the back door, and she just about died. She sees this man, and she says, "What happened to my sister? Is she dead?" She thought for sure I was dead, that they were coming to notify her that something dreadful had happened to me. They said, no, she's coming in. And then she sees me come in with my legs up in the air, tipped back upside down. So anyway, they get me into the house. They absolutely had to tip me upside down out of the chair. Thank God I had a manual wheelchair that they could put me in. And that's how I got home. But you see, Denise, they knew how to handle the situation. They can handle anything here. They are marvelous. And I thank you.
Well, my name's Joe Zertuche. My real name's Jose, but I've always gone by Joe because my dad was Jose. Born and raised in Gilroy, California. Mom came in '46, met Dad at a dance in the mid-'50s, and I was born in '59. In the '40s, my mom used to tell us that they would come from Texas. My mom and dad were both from Texas. They would come from Texas to California to work the fields. It was basically the end of the Dust Bowl days in where she was from in Del Rio. They would spend the night behind billboards because it was lit, and they had these big tarp tents, kind of like what they used in the World War II, that they had bought at the surplus stores, and they'd stay in cots and tents, and they never really knew they were poor. They just that's just what they did. And they made a living doing it. My grandfather was able to, when '46 said, "We're not going back because there's really nothing to go back to," basically gave his house to the family that stayed behind and said, rent it out or do whatever you want with it because it wasn't worth much. And he stayed in Gilroy. My brother and I ended up buying that house from the family, so we still have it in the family. It's a rental over on 10th and Eagleberry, and that was their first home. I currently live in my mom's original home that they bought in 1968, so it's long ago paid for. And I work eBay, so I'm kind of semi-retired, and I go to flea markets and auctions and whatnot to get my treasures and sell them on eBay, and it works. So I keep coming to the senior center because it beats staying at home by myself.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to San Jose State, majored in finance, became a real estate agent for 30 years, and I enjoyed it till I had a heart attack at about, how old was I? 55, I think I was. And it scared me to not get into such a stressful job. So I kind of do it part-time now through agents that I trust. And I worked in the fields as a youngster. My mom had worked in the fields. In fact, she even worked at the cannery at night, so my brother and I could go to St. Mary's School for the 8 years that we were there. And then went to Gilroy High School, graduated in '77. Things I liked in the high school that I didn't talk earlier about was I liked woodshop and also drama. So I was in a few plays in high school. Alice in Wonderland is one I remember. The Prince and the Pauper. And so I had a kind of a little thing about acting that I liked and woodshop as well. Ended up in a furniture class, and so my brother and I became carpenters thanks to Mr. Jack Reimers. And later on, we became even partners in purchasing property and developing. My brother and I started a sign business when we were in high school. In fact, my brother's still doing it now, Z Graphics, over on Eagleberry Street. And it's over 40 years now that he's been doing it. He's about ready to retire now. He's got a bunch of rentals. He doesn't really have to work anymore. But yeah, Z Graphics kept us going. It wasn't really like I was looking for a job. I had a client that I sold signs to that they said, if you got your real estate license, we'd hire you. You're good. And so 6 months later, I came back. I'm ready to get hired. They didn't think I'd do it. But I was just so tired of the sign business, so I gave it to my brother. on a side note, the acting thing, I went to El Teatro Campesino chasing a lady and ended up liking it there. And she left, but I stayed. And so that's been over 35 years now that I've been a member of El Teatro Campesino. So at El Teatro, I've been in a number of plays, extras in different films. La Bamba was one, La Pasarela was another one. Met a bunch of really cool actors and actresses. One was one that I'll never forget was he was in Saturday Night Live. His real name is Don Novella, but his father Guido Zertuche was his theatrical name. And we had done a scene that ended about, 4 in the morning. It was just a simple church scene in La Pastorela. And he says, where can we go have breakfast in San Juan? And I said, nowhere. I'd wake up my mom. So woke up my mom, told her I was bringing a priest with me. And so he did his shtick, and it was hilarious. And then my mom said, I've seen you somewhere before. And then he just broke down and told her, and she, she was mad at me, but we had a good time. But she made him tortillas. He was happy. So that was my mom. Started coming to the senior center as a caretaker of one of my uncles, and he passed away, and I kept coming. So I kind of liked it here. It was better than living at home alone. I was sort of semi-retired after suffering a heart attack after 30 years of real estate. I love going to the senior center. Beats, like I say, it beats staying home and someone to talk to. There's always gossip. There's always, but the karaoke's fun, the bingo's fun, and just, the camaraderie. There's a lot of stuff to do at the senior center.
My name is John Fletcher, and I live in Morgan Hill. I've been here since 2006. I was born in Ziegler, Illinois, in a house. My mom had a premonition that the hospital would be on fire, get damaged, so she took me out of there. She took herself out of there, and I ended up being born in our house in Ziegler, Illinois, which is a little coal mining town of only about 500 people. My dad was a coal miner all during the war, going deep in the ground. He really loved it because it's nice and cool down there. And he'd bring back little artifacts of like leaves, fern leaves and stuff that were embedded in the coal. But he came down with black lung. That's because they didn't have any protection about breathing, and he came down with black lung, and he developed sinus problems. So the doctor said, you should move to San Francisco. The air is nice and cool, it's damp there. And so my dad did. He moved in 52, he moved to San Francisco, and sure enough, it was a big improvement for his sinuses and for his lungs. And then my mom and I came out on a train, third class, riding on a train all the way from Ziegler. And when my mom, we dropped us off in Oakland, my mom, just a country girl, she looked out there and saw all that water. She said, my God, your father's moved us on to an island, I mean, it was. So I was raised in San Francisco, and then while I was there, I really made good in going to high school. I enjoyed drama. Rather than getting into sports, I got into drama. I was in like 3-term plays. I really enjoyed that. And I was into politics. I like being a class president. And so I'm considered an activist now. I'm very active in the environmental world. I always tell people about how happy I am buying my solar system 5 years ago, got it on my house, and it's saving me $1,000 a year, and it's keeping my electric car charged as well. And it's been a great investment. It's been like an 8 or 9% return on my investment that solar system has. So, and I've been married 3 times. My first 2 wives didn't care much for me, so they got rid of me. And my third wife, she died on me, unfortunately, and she was a super wife. That was the one that helped me with my ultralight business. And then I ended up meeting, thank God for the internet, because I was so busy working my business, I had no time to go out looking for women. a woman, and I'm type of guy. I'm a homebody. I like having a nest, or I like having a wife. So anyhow, I met Susan through the internet, and it was very fortunate that I met her because I bypassed her about 3 times. Finally, the intuition or the guardian angel said, "You need to check this woman out." So anyhow, I did, and I just fell in love with her, and we ended up getting married in 2006. And I've been retired from the ultralight business now since 2006, because that's when I moved over here. And I was in the ultralight business for like 22 years, teaching people how to fly these lightweight aircraft that only weigh about 254 pounds. And I had a complete business where we had maintenance, repairs, sales. So that was my career as an educator. And I like teaching, and I really enjoyed all my students and the rapport, and I miss it. I miss that interconnection with them all. So that's why it's good that I've been coming to the senior center here to make new friends and to visit and enjoy the opportunities of going on trips and things like that. So I really like that. I joined the Air Force in 1966, and I was in the Air Force until 70. I was stationed in Germany fighting the Cold War. My daughter was born there in Germany, and I got married when I was 20 years old. My wife was 18, and after I got out of the Air Force, I went to college and got a degree in sociology here at the Stanislaus State in Turlock. And then from there, I became a handyman because there was no jobs available. And in '85, my friend introduced me to an ultralight, and I just fell in love with it, and I started flying this. I taught myself how to fly in a month's time because I'd go out there every morning and practice taxiing back and forth, up and down. I wore out a pair of Red Wing boots, because there's no brakes on that. You just put your feet down on the ground to slow up, So I wore out a pair of Red Wing boots, dragging my feet. And after about a month, I'd start doing these little hops down the runway like this. I'd take off and I'd fly down the runway, maybe halfway down the runway, and then I'd land, I'd get up higher and higher. So one morning I said, I guess it's time for me to take off and solo fly. So I read a lot of books about flying, and so I took off and flying right over the freeway, and that was the first time I experienced turbulence. The plane started rocking around like this, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, that's when I got real close to God. I said, help me through this, because I thought I was going to crash, But I kept climbing, and it started to smooth out, and I circled back around, and that was my first solo flight. But what happened from that business, or how it all got started being in that business, I didn't mean to get started in the ultralight business. People just saw me flying around and having such a great time, they'd come out there and say, can I buy your ultralight from you, or would you teach me how to fly it? So that's how I got started in it, and that was back in '85, and like I said, I was in it until 2006. So it was a great part of my life, and I really enjoyed it immensely. And my wife that passed away, she was very much into the business. She was a great receptionist at the business. She would always greet people and talk to them, and we just had a good old time out there. Go to fly-ins with the motorhome and showing off the ultralight aircraft that I had, and got to traveling around to like Florida and to Washington State, things like that. So I really liked it. Really, I love it. Flat out love it. I had a lot of people. Well, one of my students said, you must have Valium running through your veins, because it gets real when in the landing process, when a student is landing, that's when it's the most tense, because I got to save us before the crash. In other words, I got a few split seconds here before I got to make sure we're not going to crash into that runway, So one day I was only flying about a year, and my friend was flying along with me, and I kept flying lower and lower over this river, up the Merced River. And I just said, it was very still, it was calm. And I said, you know, I just wonder what it would be like if I just barely down and barely touch the water, just a little kiss it, like, you know, and then come back up. Well, anyhow, that I went down, I got lower and lower to the water, and I just pushed that yoke down just a little bit, and I just barely touch it, but at that point, water flew all over me like this, and I was in the river. Man, the engine stopped, and there I was, and I looked around, I saw all this water, and I looked around and I said, heck, it's only about 1.5 feet deep. You know, it's sitting on this landing gear right there in the middle of the river. And I'm looking around like this, so my friend and I pulled that ultralight out there and cleaned up the water and stuff, and I took off and flew it home that night. So that was quite a learning experience. It was, it's something I learned. I shouldn't be doing that anymore. But I went on and learned how to fly on floats. I had put floats on these ultralights, and I learned how to fly with floats, and I would teach people how to fly with floats. But I like the land. The land is the best, you know, taking off and flying off and going around. You know, they had a short range, maybe fly 50 miles. I remember flying from over there in Turlock all the way across these mountains here into Watsonville and landing at the Seventh-day Adventist church. They had a little dirt runway, and they would allow us to land there any day but Saturday. And I'd come in and I'd bring sometimes my students over, and we'd land there, and it was just fabulous. And then when you take off, and you end up flying right over the runway, right over the water. So you better hope the engine keeps running, because you're going to go right over the water, and you better. So my philosophy is I want to make use and have as much fun as I can every day. I don't want to lose that time. You know, my time is short, so I like that there's such great opportunities here at the Senior Center. I like the food too. I mean, because there again, I just come here and enjoy the food, and I enjoy meeting people and chatting with people and learning about their stories and about their lives. I always try to be a good listener. I want to listen. I ask leading questions, and I let others talk, and I want to learn about their life. And what I've noticed is too many people got that phone in their face, and they're into the internet all the time, and they're not living with real people. I want to be with real people, not cyberspace. Cyberspace is okay, but I'd rather see people's smiles or their frowns and their movements and so forth in real life, you know.